Hi there, my name is Corey Wilson, and today I wanted to talk to you about web development workflows. As a web developer, I found a lot of my time was spent performing tedious tasks that took away from actual coding. I began to get frustrated with how inefficient some parts of my workflow were. An example would be having to manually refresh the browser every time I made a change to my style sheets. There are many more examples of the tedious nature of some antiquated workflows. Now, I'm going to talk about some exciting new technologies in the web development world that we can use to combat these problems. These same technologies have allowed me to decrease my time performing some tedious tasks and increase my time writing actual code. Let's start by taking a look at some of these tools that work for me. Package managers like Bower and NPM, build tools like Gulp and Grunt, CSS preprocessors like Sass, Less, and Stylus, CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, Foundation, and even grids like G. All of these tools lead to a more efficient workflow and ultimately a more powerful web application. I'm going to talk about how I use some of these tools to improve my daily workflow. The first tools I want to talk about are the most important pieces in automating and improving my workflow. Of course, I'm talking about build tools like Gulp and Grunt. With these tools, you can now use just one command on the terminal to run as many tasks as you want. Want to lint your JavaScript, minify your CSS, or even move files from one folder to another? These build tools allow you to do all of that at once. Now, I could spend hours debating the merits of each platform, but that's not really what we're here for. Both successfully automate your workflow, and it comes down to personal preference. I find Gulp easier and more intuitive to use, so that's what I'll be sticking with in this tutorial. The next tools I want to talk about are CSS preprocessors, such as Sass, Less, and Stylus. These tools allow you to write CSS in a highly efficient manner that, when compiled together, render out into regular old CSS. Sass is my personal preference here, mainly because it's what I'm most familiar with, and it resembles CSS more than the others. These preprocessors add functionality such as variables, logic, mix-ins, and many other features. These features allow you to craft highly efficient CSS styles in a minimal amount of time. More tools that will make your life easier are package managers like Bower and NPM. Bower allows you to install front-end libraries and frameworks like Angular and jQuery using a simple terminal command. This creates a directory that houses all of your downloaded packages and downloads the latest version automatically. Now, this is going to save a lot of time by allowing you to retrieve the most up-to-date version of a library with one command rather than having to scavenge the internet. Other style-related tools such as CSS frameworks like Bootstrap and Foundation help make a responsive design as easy as adding classes to HTML elements. I use these frameworks to help build out quick prototypes of websites during the build process. I typically remove them for custom CSS options before a project is actually deployed, but that doesn't negate their value in the development process. Now that we have an idea of what each of these tools are, let's put them together. We're going to need to do some installation first, so let's go through these steps. From the terminal, we're going to need to run an npm init. This will set up our package.json file that we can manage our npm dependencies with. The next task we need to run is an npm install of all these dependencies we're going to use for our Gulp file. As a note, make sure to use save dev in order to have these dependencies saved as dev dependencies. Then, we're going to run a bower init command. It's very similar to npm init, and it's mostly setting up a place for our dependencies. Next, I'm going to perform a Bower installation of Foundation, making sure to save it as a dependency. Now that most of the groundwork has been laid out, we can finally use these to create a modern dev environment. Let's move on to the Gulp file, the piece that ties this all together. We're going to create a bunch of tasks that can be run with a single terminal command. The first thing we need to do when laying out a Gulp file is declare all of the dependencies we're going to be using in this document. Next thing I like to do is declare some variables for commonly used file paths for convenience and to limit silly errors. The first task I've lined out is the Bower task. As it stands right now, it's a relatively simple task. It grabs the Bower directory and moves it to the site directory. The Styles task is a little more involved. It handles the compiling of our Sass into CSS, as well as the minifying of that CSS. Once that's complete, it's pushed to the site directory. And at the end, it also has a browser sync stream function, which watches any changes that happen to the CSS files. The Scripts task minifies the JavaScript and redirects it to the site directory. It also has an accompanying watch task that reloads the browser when the Scripts task is executed. I also have an HTML task that moves the HTML from the root directory to the site directory. It also has an accompanying watch task that reloads the browser when the HTML task is executed. The final task that pulls these all together is the Serve task. Browser Sync takes all the files that are pushed into the site directory and sort of serves them to the browser. From there, we also have a watch task for the styles, the scripts, and the HTML. So anytime there are changes that occur to those in the development environment, they're reflected in the browser. So you can change your styles and it'll reflect immediately without having to reload the browser. Hopefully this glimpse into my workflow has opened some doors for you. Maybe you'll want to adopt some of these tools, and if that's the case, you can find the GitHub repo for this video with the accompanying terminal commands and files needed to get your own modern development environment set up. Thanks for watching. I'm Corey Wilson, and happy coding.